Good morning, and thank you to all of you joining us virtually this morning. I'm Nancy Fishering, and I'm honored to moderate the House District 57 debate. We would like to welcome Representative Perry Will and his challenger Colin Wilhelm. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Before we begin, we would like to go over some of the ground rules. Candidates should focus on ideas, not personalities. Candidates should be courteous and not make inflammatory statements. Disrespectful or attacking speech will not be tolerated. Profane language is prohibited. Candidates may not display a prop of any kind. Candidates must strictly adhere to the time limits of each section of this debate. The moderator reserves the right to cut off a candidate who exceeds the time limit or to redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. Do you both agree to these rules?
Yes, I do.
Great. With that, we will begin with opening remarks. Representative Will, you have 2 minutes to make your opening remarks.
Thank you. And I want to say thanks to Club 20 for sponsoring this and the opportunity to even be here today on this debate. I truly appreciate that. My name is Perry Will, and I'm currently your state representative for House District 57. I really appreciate the hardworking people of House District 57. And I really like the three counties I represent, Garfield, Rio Blanco, and Moffett. I'm quite familiar with those. I'm a native Coloradan. I've been here in Garfield County for close to 5 decades now. I was a wildlife officer there for over 40 years. I know the country. I know the people. I know their values. And these constituents, I have lots of relationships with them. I've built relationships over the years, and I hold them near and dear to people. I love the people of House District 57, and I really advocate over at the state capitol for their needs in the District 7. But my entire career, I've worked in public service, like I say, with the Division of Wildlife as a wildlife officer. I've been in a lot of different policy arenas. Was working with a lot of effectively with different backgrounds and ideologies, and on multiple contentious issues. I mean, at the State House one time, they said the first session, they said it seems very contentious. I thought, well, not if you've done 40 years with the Division of Wildlife. But anyway, there's a war in rural Colorado at the legislature, in my opinion, and I want to represent rural Colorado and House District 57, protect our heritage, our values, and our future, because it's all about the kids. That's what I'm thinking. So we want to preserve that, and they have the same opportunities that I had growing up.
Thank you, Representative. Now, candidate Wilhelm, you will have 2 minutes to make your opening remarks. Please proceed.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Perry, and thank you, Club 20, for putting this on in these times. My name is Colin Wilhelm, and I want to represent House District 57. But first, today I mourn, and I think the country mourns a little bit today, too. I lost a personal hero last night, somebody that taught me a lot. Ruth Bader Ginsburg will probably go down for known as many things, in particular, champion for women's rights and a representative for all people. She will forever be remembered as the second female Supreme Court justice, but for 50 years, she went out and she fought discrimination at all levels. And she really taught me and other people that have studied her that in order to get groups of people onto equal footing, you need to elevate all people to that equal footing. So you need to be a representative for all people. I stand here today to go out to represent the 57th District, to represent all people across the board. Over the past 11 months since I declared in October, I've traveled the district. I've had thousands upon thousands of conversations with different people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all political viewpoints. And all of those conversations that I've learned that we need to listen to each other more. We need to have civil discourse in our conversations, and we need to work together because we all have the same common problems. Lack of jobs, fear of the future, of uncertainty, fear of COVID-19 and what's going to happen, teacher pay and better education. These are all kitchen table issues that we all need to find common solutions and listen to each other and find unity in these solutions to put them together to find solutions that work for everybody. So when I'm down in Denver, I'll represent every single person of the 57th, no matter their political viewpoint, their walks of life, or their background. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Next, we will have the question and answer portion of our debate. Questions have been submitted by Club 20 members from across the Western Colorado. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidate who goes first on each question will also have an opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal to the other candidate's response for that particular question. The candidate that went first in opening remarks will offer the first response to the first question. Representative Will, what do you feel are the top 3 most critical issues facing rural Colorado, and in particular House District 57?
Thank you, Nancy. See, I think the top ones are obviously jobs, our economic. We got to get people back to work, and we have to keep the economic engine going. And with COVID-19, we all know that's been a huge issue. But everything hinges on good-paying jobs, and so we need to create new jobs in these, especially in these rural areas, new industry, keep our people working. The energy needs, I think the other thing is what our energy is. There's so much on renewable energy that we're focusing too much on that, and it's killing some of our counties. Also, healthcare and education. I have grandchildren in the school system. My kids went through the rural school systems right here in the House 57th district, and those are near and dear to my heart, all those issues. But we got to get people back to work. That's the main thing.
Thank you, Representative. Candidate Wilhelm, what do you feel are the top 3 most critical issues facing rural Colorado, and in particular House District 57?
Thank you, Nancy. Well, so first of all, I believe that we need to fix our economic drivers. We need to diversify our economy across the board throughout House District 57. We need to keep the jobs that we have now for as long as we have them, bring in new industry sectors and new economic drivers that will engage new jobs for the foreseeable future and put us on a track to become a leading economic driver for the next decade to 2 decades. Next, we also need to focus on increasing access to mental health care and physical health care, while at the same time reducing costs. Those are 2 pretty separate issues that are intertwined together. And third, we need to focus on education, and particularly increasing teacher pay and figuring out ways to find more teacher support in terms of pay, so that way they're not expending their own money for their classrooms. We have great schools and we have great teachers, but we need to keep those teachers for the future.
Representative Will, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
So, and I agree on the teacher thing. We have great teachers, and affordable housing is a huge issue in this district. So, solving some of those issues with affordable housing for our teachers that don't make the most money. So, that's one of the things we need to do. And I'm in agreement. Healthcare, obviously, I ran a lot of bills over there that are concerned with mental health. Mental health is number 1 with me. And these rural areas, when I say there's a war on rural Colorado, behavioral health is one of them.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question goes to Mr. Wilhelm. Colorado was recently ranked 47th for the rural interstate pavement condition, with 6.5% of that mileage rated as poor. How will you work to improve rural road conditions if elected to office?
Well, I'm surprised that it's only 6.5%. Anybody that's driven Highway 13 between Rifle and Craig can tell you that that road is in some significant need of repair, and repair is going on. But we need to focus on finding that money from the state government. CDOT so far puts so much money onto the Front Range and doesn't put enough money onto the Western Slope. I agree that there is kind of a battle between the Front Range and the Western Slope, and we need hard voices out there who are willing to go to battle and get those bills and those needs done. Part of my idea to get people back to work is to actually get some large infrastructure projects working on the Western Slope. urgently to end the COVID economic crisis and put people back to work. And I intend and have some plans for that I want to do on day one when I get down to Denver.
Thank you, Candidate Wilhelm. Representative Will, Colorado was recently ranked 47th for rural interstate pavement condition, with 6.5% of that mileage is rated as poor. How will you work to improve rural Colorado road conditions if elected to office?
Thank you, Nancy, and I agree, and I'm surprised it's that low too, because you know, you just about need a front end alignment running to Denver from my home to the Capitol, and Glenwood Canyon and the whole stretch with potholes and all. You know, the fuel tax is one of the issues, and part of the reason that some of the money's not there is we got more efficient vehicles and they get more miles per gallon and all of that. So if CDOT's worked extensively to try to figure this out, but I think we need to find some new funding mechanisms that's going to help with our highways. And I love highway projects. They keep our local people employed. They're good jobs. They're good jobs for the community. So we know that it's a good way to invest in Colorado. So sending money towards road improvements is I'm 100% behind that. My first session bill I did get with Representative Escar, got an additional $30 million to our highways. I know that's a drop in the bucket, but everything we can do.
Candidate Wilhelm, you will now have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. And I agree that the use of the fuel highway tax is important. However, the biggest problem with that we need to address is the allocation to the Front Range versus allocation to the Western Slope. So we need to get together as a Western Slope as a whole, Republicans and Democrats down in the legislature across the board, work together to force more of that pot to come over to the Western Slope so we get our fair share.
Thank you. Representative Will, do you support the ballot measure to reintroduce wolves to Western Colorado? Why or why not?
Thank you, Nancy. And no, I do not support that initiative. With over 40 years as a professional wildlife biologist, there's no room in Colorado for wolves. You know, we're at 5.7 million people in this state, and whether you love wolves or hate wolves, you know, there should have been an assessment. DOW, CPW is on record more than once of opposing wolf reintroduction. I think that's why we've seen the initiative kind of an end around from the Wildlife Commission. And wolves, we do not need wolves in Colorado, and it's not fair to the wolves because there's not the open space and the country that they need. Wildlife, it's going to be a tough thing for our other wildlife. The wolves and that introduction will cause some real undue harm to our current wildlife population. So yes, I'm opposed to it, and we're not Wyoming, we're not Idaho, we're not Montana.
Candidate Wilhelm, the same question to you. Do you support the ballot measure to reintroduce wolves to Western Colorado? Why or why not?
You know, at this time in this economy and where we are today with our budget shortfall, I do not support the bill. You know, I understand that ranchers and growers are fearful of having wolves come back into Colorado. And I understand that there are a lot of people that want wolves to come back into Colorado. However, reintroducing them when over the last year we've seen them come back at rates that have occurred naturally, I don't see the point in us spending the money to go out and reintroduce the wolves to our communities right now when we're at a budget shortfall for over the next 5 years due to the economic crisis caused by COVID-19. We have more important ways that we can focus that money on right now. Schools, healthcare access, roads, as we've all talked about today, along with increasing economic drivers. So that's where I stand today on that issue.
Thank you very much. Representative Will, you will now have 30 seconds to respond.
And the financial part of that Colin mentioned is also true. You know, it's going to take over $6 million to accomplish that, what the way the initiative was written. There's no need for that. We already have an established pack in Northwest Colorado, and if they come down here naturally, I know Colorado Cattlemen's Association, everyone else is in support of that, in support of wolves coming here naturally, not reintroduction of those wolves.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Candidate Wilhelm. The Colorado Office of Just Transition has drafted a plan to help our coal-producing communities during the state energy transition. How do you think the state should support coal-producing communities, and what is the state's role in the energy transition?
Thank you. I think we need to look at this realistically and look at what the business is driving us to do. The business owners of the coal production plants and the coal mines have made up their decision that the market forces are at some point in the near future going to be driving us to producing less coal in a transition away from it. And instead of fighting that tooth and nail, I think that we should work to keep the jobs that we currently have, keep them open as long as we can, while at the same time bringing in new economic drivers. That's what I've been talking about. New industries, new ways to get people jobs, either transitioning them to new jobs or getting them back into school to learn new positions that they can take up. If we start this now, instead of pushing back for the next 5 years or 7 years, and then wait to transition into it when it's on our doorstep and happening, we can be there for the future of our kids and our economies. When we do this transition, we can keep our communities the same way they are.
Thank you, candidate. Now to you, Representative Will, the same question. The Colorado Office of Just Transition has just drafted a plan to help coal-producing communities during the state's energy transition. How do you think the state should support the coal-producing communities? What is the state's role in the energy transition?
Thank you, Nancy. And part of the state's role in energy transition is not send out bad policy from the Capitol that affects these communities the way they do. We need to plan and figure out how we're going to do this and not set dates of 2030 or 2025 and shut down these coal plants and that type of thing. We need to have strong planning. Instead of working in reverse, we create a just transition through House Bill 1314, and then this advisory group has to come up with the recommendations. Well, they are recommendations, and they will be sent to the governor on December 31st of this year. But then it's up to the state to figure out how to fund it, because there's no funding that came with House Bill 1314. And that's a huge problem. And then they've come up with some great ideas to deal with coal miners who have lost their jobs and this just transition in these coal communities. But it should have been well thought out instead of dictated on renewables and this Green New Deal. It should not have been dictated, and the people don't understand how that affects these communities.
Thank you very much. Candidate Wilhelm, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Now let's be clear here. The state isn't dictating the time frame or of the closing of these plants or that sort of thing. These are being dictated by the companies that own them, by the businesses themselves. The state has a role in trying to figure out a plan to help these communities through that transition. It's not the state dictating it, it's the state creating the plan for the foreseeable future. So that's where the state needs to play its role, as in to continue to drive the changing economic factors for the good and the betterment of our communities.
Thank you both for your responses. The next phase of our debate is the cross-examination portion. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to ask questions of their opponents on matters pertinent to the race or office. Candidates, please keep your remarks pertinent, and as a monitor, I reserve the right to intervene if questions get off course or if there are personal attacks of any nature. The voters want to hear how you plan to serve them as their elected official, not how well you can attack your opponent. Candidate Wilhelm will begin the cross-examination. You have 3 minutes and you may begin.
Thank you, Nancy. First, Representative Will, thank you for your service with the Forest Department and also in the last 2 years in the State House. I know it wasn't easy to take up the position when you were appointed back in 2019. I wanted to ask you about insurance and how you plan on figuring out ways to keep our people insured and make sure that they get access to health care. Currently, I believe in the Rio Blanco Herald Times you talked about you don't support universal health care. Is that correct?
That's correct. I do not.
Okay. Do you support any way of federally or state-funded health care?
No, I think I do not.
Okay.
So the healthcare issue, and let me state that in the healthcare, the number one thing facing, like in the rural counties, like what I represent, is we hear so much about health insurance coverage, getting people covered, Our number one issue should be protect our hospitals, our facilities, our clinics. Protect those, make sure that they can operate, because you can have the best health care in the world, the best health coverage in the world. If there's no facility to treat you, then it's useless. So number one, I think we need to take care of our critical access hospitals, our rural hospitals, our clinics, and all that. And that plays into the behavioral health side of things too, and our federally qualified health centers.
I agree.
All of that has to stay in there.
How would you handle that in Garfield County alone, the largest population center in Garfield, in the House District 57? We have twice the number of people uninsured as the county of Rio Blanco has people as a whole. So how would you rectify the access to health care while also not being able to pay for health care? What's your plan to allow for people to pay for health care?
Good economy, good jobs. That's the key to that. People got good jobs, there's a good economy, work for good companies, health care comes along. We can't just provide it to everyone.
So you don't support, you said you don't support the state paying for health care, correct?
No, I didn't say that. I say we need to create good, robust economies with good jobs. I understand in Garfield County, actually Moffett and Rio Blanco are about the same. There's approximately 25 to 28% of our population are on Medicaid.
But you do support the reinsurance bill. You helped to champion that getting passed.
Yes.
And a reinsurance bill, correct me if I'm wrong, is just the state creating a fund to repay health insurance companies for large exorbitant fees that they had to pay out. So it is really state paying for health care, just the money just goes to the insurance companies, correct?
Yeah, indirectly, it's creating competition. That's a problem in the rural areas. We don't have the competition with the providers.
And we still don't. We only have one provider in each county.
Well, you can't.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry, the time is up
Sorry.
on that particular question. Thank you very much. Representative Will, now you will have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Thank you. So I would like to ask the question, Colin, of what's your opinion on the governor's power and how these blanket executive orders that's been going out, especially during the COVID pandemic, you know, and I know there's a lot of unknowns with COVID-19 and its precious life at stake. I understand that. But, you know, in the initial lockdown, safer at home, all that was prudent, but for our vulnerable. But has that went too far, in your opinion?
So the way I look at this is from the legal standpoint, the legal framework, and the constitutionality of these orders, which is really what I think the crux of your question is, whether these are constitutional or not. And we have some guidance from the Supreme Court when we're looking at the constitutionality of laws. There's a bunch of tests, but there's three main tests that we can look at when speaking to the constitutionality of laws. And they are in increasing order of strictness in the application of the law: rational basis testing, intermediate scrutiny, and strict scrutiny. And strict scrutiny is the hardest one for a government to overcome. They have to show that there's a compelling need for the government, and that they're showing the most narrowly tailored and least restrictive means by promoting that compelling interest. So if we take the mask instance, the mask bill, for instance, and the mandate that Governor Polis put out there, you know, the compelling government interest there is keeping people safe, keeping the spread of COVID-19 at a minimum, to keep our hospitals functioning, to keep the economy open as a whole as best we can, and working forward for people. And having people wear a mask and maintaining social distancing of 6 feet when they're out in public is really a very least restrictive means. It's just requiring somebody to put a piece of cloth over their face. It's not requiring them to do onerous tasks and restrict where they're going or anything like that. So I think that when you look at those tests and it goes up to a Supreme Court or even to a judge in the district courts in Colorado or the county courts in Colorado, when they apply those constitutionality tests, they'll determine that they are constitutional. And I think we're seeing that in the fact that most of the lawsuits against Governor Polis were already overturned and struck down.
Okay, I mean, wasn't the deal to flatten the curve with COVID-19? And we did that. Did we?
We have to prepare for people to prevent a second curve from coming. We have to be proactive, and there's a balancing test, in my opinion.
Did we overcrowd our hospitals and our facilities?
No, we did a great job.
Yeah. So it's basically shut down the disease at all costs.
Well, we need to prevent a second wave to overcrowding our population centers and our hospitals with the coming of winter, when we all know we're going to be inside a lot more. And so there's going to be a lot more tourists coming here too, as we are a tourist destination.
Thank you both. That was a good cross-examination. We will now move into the final portion of the debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their presenting closing remarks. Candidate, this is your final opportunity to tell us why we should elect you to represent House District 57. Candidate Wilhelm, please begin your closing remarks.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Representative Will. Thank you, Club 20, for having us. You know, I meant when I said, Representative Will, that it has been a pleasure watching you in the House, and also thank you for your service over your lifetime. It means a lot to people to dedicate their lives to service. And that's one of the reasons that I became a lawyer, was to go out there and help dedicate people and help make sure that the Constitution is upheld and people have the way to protect their rights. I want to go down and represent House District 57 to continue that service. And as I mentioned before, I want to go down there so I can represent every single person. I've gone out and I've talked to, like I said, thousands upon thousands of conversations all throughout the district. I've been all the way up from Dinosaur and Rangeley, all the way over to No Name and Carbondale, and everywhere in between. And I'm very proud of the campaign that we're running. We're fighting on the issues, as Representative Will is. There's no reason for us to not have the civil discourse that we have. And I look forward to getting down to Denver in any shape or capacity as representative, and working with everybody across the aisle, and continuing to work with Representative Will, no matter what happens on November 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Will, please give us your closing remarks.
Thank you. And Colin, I appreciate those comments, because I do love serving the people of 57th. And I do reach across the aisle. All my bills are bipartisan. You can ask any of the legislators down there on the Democratic side. I go down, I represent everyone in House District 57, not R's, D's, I's, or anyone else. I represent the people of that district, and I know those people. They're my friends, my neighbors. I've had relationships with many of them for over 40 years, you know. I know the kind of people they are. They're great people. They're hardworking. They don't need their hand held. And I like that. That's a pioneer type spirit, and that's the kind of people we have here. And I really enjoy that and love that. But, and you know, I'm a no trajectory anywhere. You know, you get down to the Capitol, you'll see people at the stepping stone. Maybe they want to be governor or whatever. I'm a no trajectory anywhere. I just love serving the people. I love doing the public service. So it's no stepping stone for me. I've had my day in the sunshine. So that's not why I'm there. I'm there because I really do feel there's a war in rural Colorado, and I need to speak up for the people in this district. And that's what I've been doing, and I want to continue to do that. I want to be your voice, your choice. That's my motto. And I want to protect our way of life, our shared values, and protect our heritage. And I want to do that for the children and the kids, the upcoming, that are growing up now. I want them to have the same opportunities. So some of the policies coming out of the legislature, I just don't agree with. And one of the back questions everybody talked about, it's not the state, but it is the legislature dictating some of those dates through those bills. And then in turn, that hurts the industry and the energy providers. And anyway, I want to go back. I want to serve. I love doing it. And I promise you strong, honest, principled leadership.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Will, and thank you, Candidate Wilhelm, for participating in today's House District 57 debate. We appreciate your willingness to share with the voters how you plan to represent their interests if elected. Thank you very much. Now for the folks out there, Senate District 8 debate will begin in just a few minutes, so please stay with us.